Nobody tells you this until it's too late. The person lying next to you in bed, the one whose breathing you know better than your own, is a complete stranger. I'm 84 years old. My name is Eleanor. I slept next to the same man for 57 years, and I didn't really know him until 3 months before he died. It was a Tuesday morning, April 16th, 2019. I woke up at 6:30 like always and reached over to Bob's side of the bed. His pillow was soaked through. Not damp, soaked. I turned on the light and saw his face, gray as newspaper, his pajama shirt drenched in sweat. He looked at me and said, "Ellie, I think something's wrong." In 57 years of marriage, he'd never once admitted something was wrong. Everyone told me how lucky I was. My daughter Susan said it at least once a week. "You and Dad, you're like two puzzle pieces. You know each other inside and out." My neighbor Betty used to say, if Bob sneezed in the garage, you'd say, "Bless you," from the kitchen before he made a sound. They thought we were the gold standard, proof that long marriages worked. But here's what they didn't know. Here's what nobody tells you about spending 50, 60, 70 years with someone. You don't know them better as time goes on. You just get better at thinking you do. And if you're not careful, if you let yourself believe the comfortable lie, you'll wake up one day next to a stranger you've loved your whole life and realize you missed everything that mattered. If you're married, or thinking it's too late to really know your partner, you need to hear this before one of you runs out of time. Bob and I met in 1959. I was 23. He was 25, fresh back from 2 years in Germany with the army. We got married 4 months later at St. Catherine's Church in front of 87 people. I wore my mother's dress, altered to fit. He wore a suit he'd borrowed from his brother. For the first decade, I thought I knew everything about him. He took his coffee black with 1 sugar. He hated green beans, but would eat them if I made them because he didn't want to hurt my feelings. He read the sports section first, then business, then skipped straight to the comics. He called me Ellie. Only his mother called him Robert. We had Susan in 1961, Michael in 1963. Bob worked at Patterson Manufacturing for 34 years, same building, same desk by the window on the 3rd floor. I taught 2nd grade until Michael started kindergarten, then stayed home. We had routines. Dinner at 6. Lawrence Welk on Saturday nights, church on Sunday. Pot roast every other Thursday. The years stacked up like plates in a cupboard, one on top of the other, all the same size, all fitting perfectly. I would have told you I knew my husband completely. Every thought, every habit, every dream he'd ever had, I was so sure. Then came that Tuesday in April. The doctor, a young woman named Dr. Patel who looked about 35, sat us down in her office after 3 days of tests. She had Bob's chart open on her desk. She looked at him, then at me, then back at him. "Mr. Brennan," she said, "the scans show stage 4 pancreatic cancer. It's advanced. It's in your liver, your lungs." My hands went numb. I reached for Bob's hand, and he pulled away. Not meanly. Just pulled away. "How long?" he said. 3 months. Maybe 6 if we're very lucky." I started crying. Bob didn't. He just nodded like she told him it might rain tomorrow. In the car on the way home, I tried to hold his hand again. "We'll fight this," I said. "We'll get a second opinion. We'll, Ellie," he said, and his voice was so calm it scared me. "What?" "I'm tired," he said. "I've been tired for a very long time." I didn't understand. We'd just been to Montana the summer before, to visit Michael. Bob had hiked 3 miles with our grandson. He'd seemed fine. He'd seemed like Bob. I asked. He looked out the window at the houses going by. 1987, he said. That's when I learned the first thing nobody tells you about marriage. You can sleep next to someone for 30 years and not know they've been drowning for every single one of them. The next 3 months broke me open in ways I didn't know were possible. But they also showed me what I'd been missing. What we all miss. My friend Margaret called me 2 days after Bob's diagnosis. She's 81, been widowed for 6 years. She said, "Eleanor, I need to tell you something, and you're going to think I'm terrible." "What is it?" I was standing in the kitchen, looking at the pills the doctor had sent home with us. pain management, nausea control, a whole pharmacy in a paper bag. When Harold got sick, she said, really sick at the end, those last 2 months. We talked more than we had in the previous 20 years, and I learned things about him that made me feel like I'd been married to a stranger tyne. Like what? Her voice got quiet. He told me he'd wanted to be a piano teacher. Did I know that after 43 years of marriage? Did I know my husband had dreamed of teaching piano? Did you? No, she said. He'd never mentioned it. Not once. He worked at the post office for 39 years and never once told me he'd wanted to do something else. He said he didn't think I'd want to marry a piano teacher. Not enough money, so he never brought it up. My chest tightened. Did he resent you for it? No, Margaret said. That's the thing. He didn't. He said he'd made his choice and it was fine. But Ellie, I could have loved a piano teacher. I could have loved him in that life too. And he never gave me the chance. I was quiet for a long moment. Then I said, why are you telling me this? Because you've got 3 months, maybe more, and you can spend it taking care of Bob's body, making him comfortable, counting pills and managing appointments. Or you can spend it meeting him for the first time. I know my husband, I said. It came out defensive. Do you? Margaret said. Or do you know his routine? That night, Bob was sitting in his recliner, the blue one with the worn armrest. The TV was on, but he wasn't watching it. He was looking out the window at nothing. I sat down on the ottoman in front of him. Bob, I said, what did you mean when you said 1987? He looked at me like he was deciding something. Then he said, that's when I stopped. Stopped what? Being myself? He told me that in 1987, he'd been offered a job in Seattle. More money, better position, a chance to actually design things instead of just managing other people's designs. He'd wanted it. He'd wanted it so badly he'd gone home and practiced how to tell me in the bathroom mirror. Why didn't you? I said. Your mother had just been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. She was only 68. You were crying every night, trying to figure out what to do. I couldn't ask you to move across the country right then. I felt something heavy settle in my stomach. I would have gone. I know, he said. That's why I didn't ask. You would have said yes, and then you would have missed the last good years with your mother. You would have regretted it. So you regretted it instead. He shook his head. I made a choice. But yeah, after that, I put away the part of me that wanted things. It was easier. I started crying then. Really crying. You've been pretending for 32 years? Not pretending, he said. Just quiet. That was the first conversation. The first real one in I don't know how long. Here's the second thing nobody tells you. The person you married doesn't disappear. They just go underground. Layer by layer, year by year, they bury the parts of themselves that don't fit into the life you're building together. And you do it too? You both do it until you're two people living on the surface of yourselves and everything real is 6 feet down. Bob and I started talking, really talking. Every night after dinner, we'd sit in the living room and I'd ask him questions I should have asked 40 years ago. What did you want to be when you were 10 years old? A pilot, he said. I used to draw airplanes in all my notebooks. My teacher, Mrs. Murphy, told my mother I had a gift for it. Why didn't you pursue it? We couldn't afford college. And then there was the draft. And then there was you. He smiled when he said that last part. What's something you never told me because you thought I wouldn't understand? He thought about that for a long time. I was jealous of Michael, he finally said. Our son. Yeah. When he quit that accounting job to start his carpentry business, you remember how scared we were, how we tried to talk him out of it? I remember. I wasn't scared for him, Bob said. I was jealous. He was 33 years old and he just did it. He wanted something different, so he went and got it. I was proud of him, but I was jealous too. I reached for his hand and this time he let me take it. What else? I said. What else what? What else didn't you tell me? And he did. He told me about the poetry he used to write in his 20s before we met. He told me about the affair his mother had when he was 12, and how he'd known but never told anyone. He told me he'd always wanted to learn to sail, but thought it was too expensive, too impractical. He told me he'd voted differently than me in the 1984 election, but lied about it because he didn't want to argue. He told me he'd been sad. Not depressed, he said, just sad. A low-grade sadness that had been there so long he'd stopped noticing it, like the hum of the refrigerator. I told him things too. I told him I'd resented him in the early years, when he got to leave for work every morning and I was stuck at home with 2 babies and no adult conversation. I told him I'd had a crush on our neighbor, Tom Henderson, for about 6 months in 1979. Nothing happened, but I'd thought about it. I told him I'd always wished he'd ask me more questions about my life, my thoughts, my dreams beyond what was for dinner, and did I remember to pay the electric bill? Why didn't you tell me? He said. Same reason you didn't tell me about Seattle, I said. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to seem ungrateful. I didn't want to ruin what we had. What did we have? He asked. I didn't know how to answer that. We sat there in silence for a while. My friend Joyce came over one afternoon in June. Bob was sleeping upstairs. He was doing a lot of that by then. The cancer was moving faster than the doctors had predicted. Joyce sat at my kitchen table with her hands wrapped around a cup of tea she wasn't drinking. How are you holding up? She asked. I don't know, I said. Some days I feel like I'm finally meeting him. Other days I feel like I've wasted 57 years. You didn't waste anything? She said. Didn't I? My voice came out sharper than I meant it to. Joyce, he wanted to live in Seattle. He wanted to design things. He wrote poetry. I didn't know any of that. What kind of wife doesn't know that? Joyce was quiet for a moment. Then she said, the normal kind? What? Eleanor, you think you're unique? You think you're the only woman who got to the end and realized she'd been living with a stranger? She shook her head. My sister Diane, when her husband Paul died, she found journals. Boxes of them. Decades of journals where he'd written about his feelings, his fears, his dreams. She'd been married to him for 46 years and didn't even know he kept journals. That's different, I said. It's not. It's the same thing we all do. We think love means comfort. We think it means knowing someone's coffee order and their favorite TV show and what side of the bed they sleep on. And those things are part of it, sure. But that's not knowing someone. That's just logistics. She leaned forward. Real knowing is scary. It's uncomfortable. It means asking questions that might have answers you don't like. It means letting someone see the parts of you that don't fit the story you've been telling. Most people want peace. I wanted peace, I said. I know, we all do. But peace isn't the same as truth. Here's the third thing nobody tells you. You don't get to know someone by living with them. You get to know them by asking them about the life they're not living. The dreams they put away, the version of themselves they decided you wouldn't like. Bob died on July 23, 2019, 3 months and 7 days after the diagnosis. The night before he died, he was in and out of consciousness. The hospice nurse said it could be any time now. Susan and Michael were there. My grandson too. But around midnight, everyone had dozed off in chairs or gone home to sleep. It was just me and Bob. His eyes opened. He looked right at me. Ellie, he said. There, I'm here, I said. I love you, he said. But I wish I'd told you more. I wish I'd told you everything. You did, I said. You did? You told me? Not enough time, he said. No, I agreed. Not enough time. He closed his eyes. Then opened them again. He said, with someone else, someday, ask the questions right away. Don't wait. Okay, I said. Promise me? I promise. He died 4 hours later, just as the sun was coming up. Here's what I learned. Sitting in that room with my husband's body while we waited for the funeral home to come. Here's what I learned that I'm telling you now because maybe you still have time. The person sleeping next to you is not who you think they are. They're more. They're deeper. They contain entire worlds you haven't asked about. And every day you don't ask, those worlds get a little more buried. Love isn't knowing someone. Love is wanting to know them. It's staying curious. It's asking questions even when you've been married 50 years and think you've heard it all. And here's the truth that's simpler and harder than anything else. We hide ourselves from the people we love most. We do it to keep the peace. We do it to be lovable. We do it because we think our real selves are too much, too complicated, too sad. But what we're actually doing is making sure we die strangers. I'm 84 now. Bob's been gone 5 years. I'm not looking for another husband. Don't get me wrong, that part of my life is over. But I've started asking questions to my children, to my friends, to the woman who delivers my groceries. What did you want to be when you were young? What's something you've never told anyone? What parts of yourself did you put away? Some people think I'm nosy. Some people think grief made me odd. But some people answer. And when they do, when they really answer, I can see it on their faces. The relief of being asked, the relief of being seen. Susan came over last week. She's 62 now, dealing with her own aging, her own fears. We were having coffee and I asked her, "Are you happy?" She looked at me surprised. Why would you ask that? Because I never asked your father. Not really. Not until it was too late. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, no, not really. Not all the time. And we talked, really talked. For 2 hours. That's what I do now? I ask. I listen. I try to meet people while they're still here. Thank you for sitting with me. For listening to this old woman tell you uncomfortable truths about love and time and all the things we don't say. If you want to sit with me again, I'll be here, still asking questions, still learning that people are deeper than I ever gave them credit for. Take care of yourself, whatever that means for you. And maybe tonight, ask the person next to you something you've never asked before. You might be surprised what you learn.